Hey everyone, welcome back to DC MotorWerks. Our good technician Evan has been working very diligently here today to get to this lovely piece right here. So let's go ahead and tell you about it. This here is the M273 V8 engine. This is also very similar in design to the M272. I apologize, Blake's making a bunch of noise back there, but hopefully the mic doesn't pick that up too well, but work must go on. Anyhow, so whenever you look up one of these engines, one of the first things that's going to come up is the balance shaft or idler gear in the case of the V8 engine. That was kind of the Achilles heel of this motor that caused all kinds of fuss when these were new. 18 years later. 18, 19, give or take. Since this engine and the 272 V6 counterpart has come out, that we've actually seen one of these again. This is a very nice one-owner R230 SL. We've talked about these in some other videos, but this one is very nice. It's a 07 model or 08. I think it's an 07. But one owner has 38,000 miles, and this has happened to this one. He was aware of it. So what happens here, if I can find the new gear, which Evan has so handily ready for me. So you can see our teeth are, these are herbivore teeth and these are carnivore teeth. So, but that does not work in an engine when you have a timing chain that relies on being properly timed, and which is part of its name actually, to make the engine run. So thankfully, this doesn't cause enough of a problem that the engine doesn't run. All it does is kind of set a fault code. But there's not a whole lot of consistency to these. Kind of like when we talk about M156 head bolts, which is in another video, which we'll see if cameraman will stick that up there. But yeah, I don't know what to say about them anymore because this one has 38,000 miles and the last one we did had 221,000 miles. So generally, if they did fail, kind of like head bolts, it was early in life, but we've gotten some test subjects that say otherwise at this point. But you can see how big of a job this can be, that the whole engine is torn down out of the car. You know, oil pans removed and valve covers, which is a little bit of a thing on these engines because the cam bearings are part of the valve cover. It is not a separate part, but not too terrible of a job, wouldn't you say, Andy?
Not awful, no. Especially if you've done a couple of them.
So, but all this does here, and this was just a, I don't know, we call it the bean counters, but maybe there's some hidden documentation deep within Mercedes-Benz that says otherwise, but this happens because the gear was not, what is the correct term?
Annealing, heat treated.
Heat treated hardening of the metal. So as the chain is rolling around on this gear, you can imagine it doing that it just slowly wears away at those teeth. And what happens is that allows some extra slack in the chain there, which in turn, when that multiplies up to the cam gears here, it allows them to go just out of phase to where the engine computer says we are not happy with the timing and you need to fix your car. Benz actually did have a warranty extension on this. It was some stepped, like prorated, depending on the mileage. I can't remember at this point. I only did one at my time at the dealer. I don't know, Andy probably did a few more of them. Blake, 10 years at the dealer, I don't think you did any, did you? So, not super common, but there were some guys that did a bunch of them. So, I don't know. One of those things you have to kind of determine for yourself. But at this point in age, just like the one we did with 221,000 miles, you can find the later engine. We might stick up in some area of the video or in the description the actual bulletin that gives you the engine number, which if you step back here, Mercedes uses this strange dot matrix, which is very difficult to read. But we've tried a bunch of different things. We'll try and like puts a paint pen over it and wipe it clear to see if it kind of accentuates the.
That's good. Excellent.
See, Evan in here for the assistance, but you can read this engine number and look at that bulletin and see if it is within the range of this issue. And like I said, this is the second one we've done at this shop, and both have decided they just want to fix the engine they have because they know it, they trust it. And honestly, these 273 engines are great. They don't really have any other inherent issues. Everything's pretty simple on them. Never had to do a leaking valve cover. The only reason I've ever had to pull them off is because of this. Andy may have something to say otherwise. I know he's had to fix a few of them early in their life.
I've seen a couple of porous valve covers. The early production runs, they had, I guess, poor casting. They would leak through the top of it. Other than that, the glue string around the edge usually never leaks. I've seen a few cam lobes wipe out. A few rockers have problems. I've seen a broken valve spring cause misfires, but all in all, they're really good engines. They don't have a ton of trouble.
They make great power, 382 horsepower in the 5.5 liter form. They do have the very limited production 4.7 liter, which was only in the GL 450, which was 335 horsepower, but the 5.5 is the one to get. They have a couple common oil leaks, but they are super simple to fix. There is the centrifuge cover and the cam plugs on the back of the engine here, which I'm not sure what Evan did with them. But it's just a little plastic cap with an O-ring on it, and they will leak on the back of the engine. That's the larger one. So they will either have a vacuum pump in this location, which is
what I'm holding
back here on the intake cam on bank 2. So some iterations have a vacuum pump. You can see the outline from how it would mount there. But they just pop into the back here. They're, I don't know, like $8 a piece or something. Not terrible. Yeah. So there's 3 or 2, depending on which engine you have. And the centrifuge cover, which they still can't get right. The cam plugs have kind of quit leaking as they've gotten older, and they're in their, what, 5th or 8th modification. But this is a centrifuge cover. You can see this is a factory one. Some of the aftermarket ones have a really thin O-ring, and they don't last nearly as long. But just this O-ring flattens out. It goes right here on the back of the motor.
You can see that outline right there where it used to be.
But it will leak on the catalytic converter, which lives right here when it's in the car, and it smokes and stinks, and that's usually what, you know, tells people that something is wrong. But these are 7250, and depending on what model it's in, I don't know, hour, 1.2 in labor, sometimes a little less.
GLs are the worst.
Oh, yeah. And then in the front of the motor, if I can find the timing cover somewhere. Evan, what'd you do with it?
Over there on the bench.
Here's what I wanted to see.
On the workbench.
Oil filter housing, those like to leak. With the oil cooler here, you'll do both. Again, super easy repair. What is it, like 8 bolts?
The black seal there.
I call it the racetrack gasket because that's kind of what it looks like. It looks like a racetrack. But there's one in between the cooler and the housing here also. Same thing, just kind of leaks some oil. But super easy fixes. Early ones had the camshaft magnets, which those were kind of troublesome early on. Again, they've kind of become better as they've gotten older. That the replacements aren't so much of an issue. But those will set a fault code. These aren't terribly expensive either. There's nothing really egregious on these engines. Here's the camshaft magnet. I will have Andy explain this one because he is our resident tink, and this is his favorite thing to do, is figure out how things work.
The plunger would seize up in here, so when it would try to actuate this button is how it functions. That's what redirects oil flow to change your cam timing. So whenever the computer would fire this, actuate that solenoid, and it's supposed to make the plunger come out, it would seize and set a fault code. So the computer asked for it to happen, it's checking timing, and it never changed, so then it sets a fault code. But supposedly they've changed the coding on this shaft, so now it no longer seizes. So there's an updated version.
Another main thing on these is the intake manifold. I think we've talked about that in other videos, but it is you can really get a good view of it here now that it's all torn down. But you can see this arm here. So this is your variable intake runners. So they call it what, a 2 or 3 stage intake manifold.
So pulls vacuum here, actuates this arm, and it'll rip this ball socket off of this plastic piece here, and this shaft will just be hanging there. And so it no longer actuates it.
So that will set a fault code, but not a check engine light. So a lot of people don't know that it's an issue, but it can kind of affect the power output of the engine. You'll either have a little less torque on the bottom end or a little less power on the top end, depending on what phase it broke at. But these are pretty expensive. I think the whole intake's what, $800 or more?
Yeah, and there's repair kits out there, but my theory is that if it broke that arm off, then the bushings are probably stiff or seized or something. There's a reason the arm broke off. It didn't want to move for some reason.
And
I
carbon
recommend
buildup maybe.
Yeah, I recommend just replacing the whole intake, and you'll get all the bushings down this side of the runner that allow that to actuate. Everything on the front comes new with the new intake.
So, as a DIY kind of thing, you know, it may be advantageous for you just to do the repair kit, but when you're doing it in a setting like this, it's best to probably just replace the whole thing. I know it is more costly, but you want the repair to be right, and if you just do a repair kit and they're back in a couple of, you know, months, years, whatever, you know, it doesn't get as much for their money. So that's always a decision that has to be made, and that's usually one we give to the client. Say, hey, do you want the patch fix or do you want the 100% fix? So
it's the same labor too, so you're only buying the difference in part. So if it breaks, then you're paying the same labor again to replace it this time.
But that's kind of the download on the 272, 273 engines. The 272 is a little more involved because the 6-cylinder 90-degree being out of balance, it has a balance shaft instead of just the idler gear, and it goes down the whole motor. You actually have to get to the back of the engine for those two because they bolt in through the back and you have to pull it out the back of the motor. So a little bit more involved for those. These are super easy. Like this one, we're just going to replace the gear, 38,000 miles, the timing chain, all the rails are in great shape. No issues there. So we'll put a new gear on and this will be ready for many, many years of use, and that kind of covers it. So if y'all are looking for one of these, you know, it is best to check that engine number, which again, we'll put in the description below. And you can check to make sure that you won't have this issue. And if you do, it's not terrible. As a DIY, it's, you know, not as expensive, but doing it here at the shop, it's with all the pluses, like we're going to do some engine mounts, we're going to do gasket seals, and it comes out to around $6,500, $6,000, depending on how much while you're in there as you do. So this one being an ABC car, we've got this pulsation damper here, which you can't get to on the 273 engines without removing the pump or moving the pump to the side, because it'll start to hit the cylinder head right here. And then the high pressure ABC line, which lives, where does he have it tucked away? That one, once you disturb it, tends to blow up. So that's kind of another while you're in there sort of thing. So it depends chassis to chassis. This being a 230 with ABC has a little bit different, a little bit more expense. But that gives you the whole rundown on these engines, and we all love them here. Blake's got one, Andy's got one, I've got one. Evan should have one. He's actually thinking about it.
Working on it.
And if the technicians drive them, they're usually pretty good engines. So sometimes we are, well, I can't speak for Andy, but sometimes I punish myself and buy the ones that I probably shouldn't because I like V12s.
The 120 motor,
120s are great.
275, 156.
All the good stuff. What'd you say, Blake?
We'll just say that nobody drives a 278.
No, no one does.
Nope.
I don't know. Evan was thinking about it. He was teetering on the edge.
I'm still there. I'm still on the fence.
But when he has to replace the motor for cylinder wall scoring, he'll regret his decision.
Yeah,
But currently, how many of your cars are broken?
Oh, that's a low blow.
I'm not gonna tell anything.
So Evan's not known for making the best car decisions, but but he has fun. That's what matters, right? But we thank you all for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff that YouTube likes. And we're going to let Evan get back to work, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.